what I'd like to do this evening is really just focus down on some of the key issues about paddles, and obviously stress the importance of them. And that's really the whole thrust of the evening. And as Chris says, we don't have a lot of time, so 1 hour to just talk about paddles is a short time. I've been lucky enough to actually help with design paddles in the past, specifically with outdoor canoeing, more recently with Stand Up. And I've even made my own paddles in the past, which has always been a challenge, but it's been interesting to do so using timber primarily. But even in that process, you learn an awful lot about what works and what doesn't work. So, what I like to do this evening too is cover myths, the mythology behind some of the things that we've heard. And there's certain sort of cliched expressions, which I want to address as well, because we need to take stock of those and just see how much validity there is behind them. So I'm just going to move right along, and this statement here, the relationship that you form with your paddle must be so as you are totally at ease with the nuances of how it feels in the water and in the air as you wield it as an extension of yourself. Think of if you were a warrior with a sword, you've got a much better chance if you've got a well-designed sword as against one that's just not fit for purpose. When you're on the water and you're swinging this thing around and you're on the water for extended periods of time, you do form a very close relationship with it. It absolutely is an extension of yourself. The issue is, how good of an extension of yourself is it? I mean, does it talk to you, or is it absolutely dead in the water? If it's not speaking to you, then in some way you could say that in actual fact, this is not a tool that's really doing you any favors. And this is the rub. This is the thing that we need to knuckle down and really consider strongly. And then it applies to all paddle sports. It's not just the stand-up paddleboard. It doesn't matter whether from kayak to canoe to stand up. The approach towards SUP, towards paddle ownership is always the same. So that's just gives you an idea of where you reach, just how important you should be looking at this this implement. I just want for you to really consider the paddle too. It's iconoclastic. It's symbolic. What I mean by that, I mean that there are cultures around the world that would view the paddle as the symbology of the paddle in the way someone might view a cross. For example, I know it sounds extreme, but actually it's not far from the truth. By that, if you consider the cultures of Micronesia, Melanesia, Polynesia, they are canoeing cultures, and the paddle is that mode of helps them with that transportation, the mode of transportation, the propulsion rather than that they need. So, this is not an insignificant piece of equipment that's been around for thousands of years. Anecdotes. I just want to give you a quick anecdote. This extension of yourself. For example, I remember some years ago, I was with a very close friend of mine, Chris Kjelsen. We'd flown coming back from Hawaii. We stopped in the Cook Islands. We landed and we burst some hydraulics on landing, and rather than stay in the airplane, everyone had to get out, and we needed to spend 24 hours there. Well, in that process, stood in the airport, I'm standing there with a paddle, a bunch of paddles. The next minute you've got random strangers coming up to you who are Cook Islanders saying, hey, you paddle canoe, next thing we've got a conversation. Next thing, we left the building, went outside, and we paddled after in the lagoon and had a great time with these folks, came back the next day and got on a plane and flew home. And, I think the point here is that, it's almost like an international symbol. If you've got this paddle and you travel with this paddle, it's an expression of who you are, expression of what you do, what you'd rather be doing. So it's a powerful thing. But let's make sure we get caught with a nice paddle in the airport, not such a good one. So moving on from there, I'm going to roll through this quite quickly, and we will get some really meaty stuff and some controversial stuff in a moment. But paddle anatomy, you need to understand the anatomy of the paddle. I mean, every component of it, from the grip at the very top, from the grip at from the top of it all the way down to the tip of it. So you've got then the grip. The grip comes in different shapes and different sizes and different forms. I'll show you those in a minute. But the shaft is also called the loom. Okay, the throat area is around it. That's the area in which you actually put your lower hand around, you grasp it, and how that feels is important. It's integral to your connection with the paddle, and as is the grip. Those things, they're very tactile. If it's uncomfortable anyway, if it doesn't work for you, that's an immediate issue. So that's something you'd be switched on to and aware. The throat area, is the diameter too much or too little? Are you having to squeeze to control it or not? Is it round or is it oval? These are all little micromanagement details that actually do make a difference in the long run. We have what's called the compression side of the shaft. So in other words, the side that's being bent. So if I'm paddling and I'm pushing this way, this would be the compression side, because as it flexes, all this side gets crushed and the other side stretches. Why is that important? Well, it's important from the point of view of looking for stress fractures. It's important from the point of view of flex and how these paddles are made, and it's not insignificant. Going all the way down to the blade itself, you've got the shoulders. So if I take an example here, okay, so here's the neck. Okay, the neck which joins onto the shaft itself runs into the shoulders. Okay, well, analogy for ourselves. Okay, and the shoulder just got the side edges, if you like, pretty straightforward. Then you go around into the tip area. Okay, on the blade itself, you can just see a dihedral on here. This is a little raised dihedral. Okay, that's to prevent fluttering, so the water can actually exit left and right. You have equal portions either side to prevent this sort of motion, which is a fluttering. So there are many little things to consider. So this side here is actually this is the back side. This is the low pressure side. This is actually the front of the blade, even though you might think it's the back, but it isn't. It's the front. This is the compression side that does the work. Again, not unimportant, just to know these little micro neat details here, and to understand what parts of your paddle are doing what exactly. And of course, the design and the shape of these templates are essential, in terms of how they work. And we'll get on to blade area and stuff in a moment, concaves and so forth. So, this paddle, it gets that shaped. There are thousands of templates lying out there from, bespoke specialist people who have been designing paddles for years, all the way to Alibaba.com in factories in China, where there are just hundreds and hundreds of these templates lying around. You just grab one off the shelf and produce them and chuck them out the door. And then hopefully the marketing department can somehow or other justify their existence and tell you, wow, this is the greatest thing, best thing since bottled beer. But actually, is it? So, again, arm yourself with knowledge about the paddle itself. Learn the anatomies. Learn all little bits of it from the top to the bottom. It's very important. Now, shoulders. The shoulder of the paddle is quite critical. So there's a few examples here of different paddles with different shoulders. Now, what's really interesting about shoulders is that a paddle or a blade that's got a lot of shoulder, a big shoulder sort of extension on it. This would even be considered to have quite a large shoulder on it. Okay. What you can do with this is that when you're paddling, when you're pulling down the side of the board or the canoe, whatever it might be, it conforms to the shape or the rail. So it conforms, so it can actually wrap around. If this was the board itself, okay, the rail would conform to the shoulder. That means that part of the blade actually travels underneath the board to some extent, or the canoe. And the theory behind that years ago, and it's true today, is it actually creates dirty water underneath the board. So it breaks the connection. It breaks up the surface tension. So actually there is a valid reason for it being there. It's not just some random concept that we just, it looks nice, so we can call it a teardrop. It was actually put there for a reason. Now, if you look at, for example, the Kealoha here, it's got very straight shoulders. In fact, it's shoulderless, to be fair. It's just straight down. It's just a different sort of approach. Whereas the Zarari here, or even the C4 blade, they've got more pronounced shoulders. But this Zarari mostly is the most dramatic example. So that's not unimportant. That needs to be considered. How much shape is there? How much shoulder is built into the paddle that you're going to buy, and does it suit your paddling style? Grips. I've had questions about grips in the past. So for example, if you can see that, okay, this is a palm grip. Okay, a palm grip. Basically, the idea is that it sits in the palm, fingers wrap over the top, and the idea is that you've got a flat spot there for the fingers, and you've got a good connection. They're excellent, but for really sort of rough water or white water stuff, paddling, for example, there can be a tendency to slide off of it. So they're positive, but not as positive as, say, a T grip. So a T grip would be far more basic. It's very, very rudimentary. A T grip is more like this, you know, very rudimentary shape. It literally is, you know, just meat and potatoes. It's just basic, you know, but it does the job. You can really hang on to that. Then you've got another option, which is a hammerhead. And a hammerhead is actually a variant. You know, it's sort of, it's actually flat on one side, and it's got the roundness on the at the back. So it's a little bit like the palm grip, but not quite as fancy. Okay, because it's a square. It's a bit like a T. It's somewhere between a T grip and a palm grip. So that's the hammerhead. It's a nice compromise, actually. You know, very, very popular in our canoeing circles. You do see it in stand-up as well. So why they're important to know? Because, you know, that does make a big difference in terms of that tactile and that feel, you know, that control, and how big your hand is, and that, does it sit well? I mean, some people paddling it bruising, they literally feel bruised in the top hand because it's not comfortable. So again, you know, when you're looking at paddles, which one is going to suit you, that's another micromanagement detail that's not insignificant. Any questions, Chris? Can I just keep on going? You're good?
Well, we've got a question already, which is regarding wrist injuries and issues. I don't know whether you wish to cover that a little bit later on, Steve, because I'm sure we'll get quite a few questions regarding, you know, I've got a sore wrist, shoulder, or so. So I don't know if you plan to cover that later, or do you want to have a question now?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think, you know, well, ask the question.
Okay, so it comes from Owen. Owen said he's got a wrist issue and he's working with a physio at the minute. Yeah. And he's asking, would it help his recovery if he used to work with a smaller blade designed for a higher cadence?
Right, okay. Yeah. Yes, possibly. It really depends on a number of factors, and I will get to blade sizes and areas in a moment. But the other thing is that with what he'll probably find is, I expect it depends. He probably, with the wrist, he's probably got. He might find with the top hand, when it's the injured wrist is at the top, it might hurt, and when it's down the bottom, it doesn't hurt, or vice versa, or it might hurt wherever it is, top and lower. That's not insignificant again, because that tells you a lot about, you know, is it the pulling motion with the lower hand that's causing the pain, or is it the upper load? Because the hands do different things. So the top hand is loading. If you're doing it correctly, it's loading downwards more than it's going forwards, obviously. And the lower hand is pulling, so it's more off. You know, it's more coming from the lats and the top of the back and so forth. So it's a different kind of motion. But compression, if compression is the problem, you know. A smaller blade, yes, would probably help to some degree, especially at the entry and as you're getting lift with the blade. You could try not perhaps pushing the blade in quite such so sort of reaching as far as you would normally, compromise the reach a little bit so you can work through it. The smaller blade, as I say, would take some of that pressure and that load away. The other thing is to do, if it was the top hand hurting, which it tends to be, the other way is to look at the grips. You know, some grips are better suited for driving down than others. So the hammerhead's quite good for that, and the palm's quite good, but the T grip's not quite so good. So depending on the shape, you need to look at that and do some research and, you know, see what's going to work for you best. But that would be my main question, knowing the difference, because I know that, you know, I've had some wrist issues in the past, and driving down is the one that hurts more than the pulling. Pulling never seemed to be an issue, but driving down definitely does. So in short, yes, that could help. Remember though, if you go down to a smaller blade, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have less effort, and you have to pull less. And in fact, you have to pull a little bit harder with a small blade to get the same result. But it's a different energy system, and your stroke rate is going to increase. So you can still use the big paddle, but you've got to slow everything down a little bit, just not be so aggressive. So that sort of helps. All right.
Yeah, it's quite a pertinent question. Since we've been just talking about grips, I'm sure that will make a difference if Owen can try muck around with some different grips as well. Another question that's come in, Steve, while we're talking about the subject, you've got a picture on the screen, you know, with your templates, and you were talking about the shoulders. Paul's asking, what's the benefit of the shoulderless Kia lower paddle if the others break surface tension?
Yeah, good question. Well, of course, it creates a slightly higher aspect paddle. So, in other words, instead of putting all your concentrated effort and your surface area in a more concentrated area, where the power is sort of dead center. With the keel lower, it's going to sit a little higher. So it's a little higher aspect, and of course, you start going into higher and narrower and taller paddles, it becomes even more so. That center of effort moves ever taller. The teardrop shape with the keel lower is a fairly it's very much primarily was designed for outrigger canoeing, although it did exist in river paddling prior anyway. But and in fact, the ZRE is actually a refined version of those original sort of teardrop paddles. It's taking it to another level in having those curvatures, so you can connect with the rails and get underneath the canoe. The kilo allows you can get a bigger blade area, and it's more progressive effectively. The other thing is with the low center of effort with the ZREs, this is a paddle that requires a lot of explosive energy in terms of its use. You can't, because it isn't progressive. It's kind of all or nothing. Whereas the kilo is more sort of, you can be more progressive in terms of, you don't have to bury all of it, but you need to bury most of it in order for it to be effective. So the other thing is that with those paddles, they make quite good rough water paddles, so that when if you're pitching and moving up and down all the time, you've got that height you can play with. Whereas a short paddle, if you miss a stroke, and it's not uncommon perhaps in very rough water to almost miss one because of the pitching going on, so it compensates for that. The shape, the kilo. So that is kind of where the differences come. But the ZRE definitely is a refined version and really came out of river paddling, to be fair, and some degree. Then they use it in rapid paddling as well, but they are seated. As a stand-up paddle, what we're learning now is that actually the taller paddles are a little bit more, generally more effective, to be fair, and more and high aspect. So I think that's where we get a little bit. This is where we're seeing the evolution of stand-up paddleboarding and the equipment that we're using. We're getting away from short, dumpy paddles that look to taller and narrower, seeing that as a better solution. So I hope that kind of helps you a little bit.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Steve. I'm just mindful of time's already flying by. The questions are flying in. So just finally, one more question Michelle's asking, and I could vouch for this, based in the UK as well. Why is it that T and hammerhead grips seem to be more difficult to come by, and in the UK, especially in palm grips, seem to be the go-to one that most of the paddles that are supplied that I've experienced actually come with the palm grip as well. So.
Well, I think this is, the palm grip is designed for comfort largely, and I think also that again, this is just one of these micromanagement details. It's not the companies that are designing are sort of, they do get a little bit focused on the lower end of the paddle and not so much on the upper end of the paddle, and it seems to be convenient just to churn those out. When in reality, you should be able to order a paddle and specify, I want T-grip, palm grip, hammerhead. Why not? Hell, they should even be interchangeable, perhaps for different scenarios, because there are situations where you might want to use the T-grip because it's very wet and, it's just, for one particular reason in the water, and on other days it's hot and dry. You don't want that. You need something more, palm grip is more comforting, or even better, go to the hammerhead. Now, the hammerhead to me still is one of the best shapes you can use. It's a really comfortable shape. When you use the palm, there's always that potential for boom, and I've seen broken noses. I've seen several broken noses. I've seen cut eyes. I've even smashed myself in the face. In fact, it's quite common to wear peaked caps with really high, strong plastic visors. So if you slide off, it'll hit the peak right and hit you in the face. So yes. Why? I can't really answer that, but I have a great suspicion that it's just that it does come down to, and I don't mean to be cynical, but the truth is that a lot of these factories in China, that's just simply what they've got lying around. They're not necessarily offering anything else, and that's a reality of it. And actually, the brands aren't necessarily putting pressure on them to make anything different. So I think that's kind of the honest truth of it, to be fair. But I would like to see more hammerheads for sure. They're a great shape.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'd like to try one. I've not actually tried one myself, so
Yeah.
hopefully we will get to see some. So thanks for that, Steve. I think probably best to move on now.
Yeah. Okay. So this is going to get lively now. So you see, this is we're talking about paddles. We're talking about by investing in a good paddle and why that's important. So for me personally, the problem begins with the retailer who's very overly sort of zealous in trying to sell you a board at any cost, and the buyer knows no better. And the reality is that they're not doing any favors. So I've got this buy beware of the free paddle, for example. So free set of steak knives with every whatever. You've got to. I feel sorry for those walking to stores because with no knowledge of stand up paddle sports at all, because they're really lambs to the slaughter. They walk in, they themselves are sort of all caught up in the idea of buying the board, which is absolutely fine. But of course, it's really up to the retailer to slow the buying process down. And after you quiz them about what their budget is, you then have to say, well, the most thing you really need to do is let's budget for the paddle first, and then we'll consider the board kind of secondary. But it's never that way, and it's even worse than that, because they'll empty out your pockets for the board, and then they'll throw in a supposedly free paddle. And you need to think about that long and hard, because if it's free, just how good is it? And once you understand how important the paddle is as an extension of you and as a tool, if that is a poor, inferior tool, the net result is a pretty poor outcome. And it wouldn't matter all the money in the world you can spend the best money on the best board in the world, and you go and paddle it with a piece of heavy industrial dross, and you will just rue the day you ever spent all that money on the board, because you've got to have a good paddle. It's I say it's mandatory, but the point is that it is that important. It really is. It can be the difference between you're enjoying the sport and absolutely loathing it, and it can also be the difference between my lips moving and telling you how to paddle. If you listen to other webinars we've done, we can talk about paddling technique till the cows come home. But if you've got the wrong tool that's very heavy and does all the wrong things, and actually you can't implement correct technique as hard as you try, it just will not work. So it becomes superfluous. So this is where retailers need to be far more honest, and selling a paddle is actually an easy sell compared to a board. I mean, it really is. So it's not so much money, but you've got to put focus on that. It's really, really critical. When I came over here about 10 years ago and started getting involved in sort of sharing my knowledge with people, and people were just getting in the stand-up paddleboarding industry and selling, they hadn't even given any thought to the paddle. They just thought it was completely secondary. It's like sell boards, but the paddle was almost like it was just a secondary consideration. Therefore, it's just have a freebie. Here's one for £30. It's fantastic. Which, brings me to this. I mean, this is an actual pitch, from an actual store in this country that sells lots of boards. So they would say, for example, that, yes, they say that budget's often a consideration, which means for many people, you're going to have to buy an alloy paddle. Have to? I mean, since when? And alloy paddles that they actually quote, they say they're good, solid, and durable. Well, so is a central tunnel support, but that's what it's designed for. But when it comes to paddling, you need something that's going to be a bit more, amiable, and you can form a relationship. It's going to give you what, the experience you need. And they say our packages come with at least one good quality SUP alloy paddle. Well, of course it does, because it's practically free and it costs about £5, £10 from a Chinese factory. So what do they care? But they should care, because actually they have a duty of care to make sure you enjoy your paddling experience. So all the money they extract out of you for the board is all well and good, but they've already done you a disservice. It's just, you've got to arm yourself. And some of you out there will be listening this evening. You've probably possibly been there through that situation. Others of you already know, and you've probably bought your way up to the better paddle. and you start adding up all the money you've ever spent on getting to where you are now. Some of you probably have spent £1,000 or close to it because you've over time gotten there when you should have done that a long time ago and saved yourself a lot of money. Notwithstanding that really good quality carbon paddles are actually, they hold their value very well. Yeah, they really do. You go to sell one after a few years, and once you've looked after it, the thing is practically new. Whereas you can't say that as a board, they depreciate massively. So that's just something to consider. This is an actual ad here promoting stable, powerful stroke blade style, and they're talking about the fact that it's got a dual concave blade face with dihedral angle creating speed and drive and lift. Well, actually, it's heavy, it's clumsy, it's cheap. The concave blade face they're talking about is on the wrong side. It's actually completely the wrong way. They're talking about the back face, not the power face. So that's just completely, but this is the anti-paddle that'll pull paddlers off, basically. So it does come down to a question of money, and there's all sorts of paddles on the market, all different combinations. There's a whole list there of different things you can combine everything. But all these sharp blade and blade core sort of combinations are all just a way to avoid the hard truth. That is that, especially in stand-up paddleboarding, we've got such a long lever arm that the carbon paddle still wins out pretty much. Well, it does all the time, let's be fair, it does. So everything else is a compromise, whether you're using fiberglass, whether you're using some molded plastic polycarbonate, whether you're using alloy or carbon Kevlar mixes, or no matter what. Carbon, though, will always have a certain amount of fiberglass or something in it to keep, especially in the shaft, because it needs to have some flex. So there are different amounts of that put into it to make sure it does flex. You don't want to paddle with iron bars, so that's another thing to be clear about. They will come with different percentages of GRP or fiberglass and carbon. Nevertheless, that's just how it is, and of course it all depends on this question of affordability. But the question I would say is, can you afford not to if you are even remotely serious about having a good time on the water? So again, there's all these arguments. Many some people say, well, there are thousands of budget paddlers on the water and they work just fine. But what does that mean? Adequate? Are they adequate? Well, if you want an adequate experience, go ahead. That's really the reality of it. But as I say, one of the thrusts of this, what I'll try and get through to everybody, is that the paddle is basically what is an extension of you, a tool, and it's absolutely essential that you can form a relationship with it and use it. In a very, although we have gross motor movements to swing the paddle, there are a lot of micromanagement details going on at the same time. So in that respect, the actual paddle is quite a refined tool, and of course the more refined it is, the more it will give you what you want and speak to you. So I've got all these things here about what cheap is. So there's no point having a budget board and using expensive carbon blade, as it won't add to the stand-up paddleboarding experience. But of course that's complete nonsense. That isn't so at all, because really, if you have it doesn't matter what sort of board you have. If you have a bad paddle, you can have a bad experience regardless. But that's just how it is. You've got to have the good paddle to get the best out of the board. So all these things are all relative, but certainly a heavy paddle doesn't work so well. It's going to slow the learning process, reduce your experience, and give early fatigue, possibly injuries, and a whole bunch of other things. So they are things to not dismiss. I'm going to come back to blade paddles now, and here's a good one. So right now, a blade area, or size, if you like, has become, for me, the biggest single subject of ignorance in relation to paddle knowledge I can imagine. It's just, in some of the quotes that I hear, I'm like, really? So here's a good one. I'm just going to move this down here a little bit. So, so this is actually a quote from a well-known guy, and I respect him greatly, but it hasn't helped to be fair. So the size of a stand-up paddleboard's blade can be compared directly to gears on a bike. You've probably read that, maybe. The higher or the smaller the blade, the less effort each stroke requires with less forward motion generated. Well, as I say here, I'm sure the world's fastest paddlers will be pleased to inform this as a guy laughing his head off, because that's just complete nonsense. Just because the blade is smaller does not mean it requires less effort to pull it. It does not mean you will go slowly. it just doesn't work like that. Because you work on different energy systems to make use of this small paddle. There's very good reasons why you want to use a small paddle. We'll go for the smallest you can. So I've written here that the use of a small blade requires speed. By speed, I mean when you place the paddle in the water, as you place and get the catch, you want speed in terms of acceleration to get through the catch to the pull phase, because you want to anchor that blade as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Now, if you pull slowly, all the water is going to spill off it. You're not going to achieve that. So it requires definitely a more aggressive stroking technique to use it. It requires slightly different energy system to use it to get it. Okay, so they're important to consider. The other thing is that there's only one type of station you're anchoring. So what I mean by that, whether you anchor a small blade in the water, because the idea is you pull yourself up to the paddle, right? So if you anchor a big blade or a small blade, if it's anchored, it's anchored, it's stationary, it makes the difference. Are you with me? It doesn't have to be huge, doesn't have to be, or it could be small. As long as it's not moving, it's done its job. So anything bigger than that is surplus to requirements, which is just actually drag. And that's why the big paddles can become quite hard to use in many respects, because they end up causing more drag. They often are heavier and they're just more cumbersome. So actually they'll suck the energy out of you. So there are reasons to sort of work progressively towards the smaller paddle. How are we going, Chris?
Yeah, all good. I'm going to come on to blade and size area. And shortly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, just give an example. Like, so if you know about rowing, the concept 2 rowing machines, so when you have in a competition set up, you can set the resistance what level suits you best. You can set the resistance so that when you pull, it's very hard to make the wheel and the internal mechanism spin, or you can set it very, very light. And that's really significant. It's significant because each individual selects what they want. Now, just because the light paddler may have said he wants a light setting on the concept 2, as long as if he pulls it with great gusto, or whether you use a paddling ergo, for example, you have a single blade. If he really pulls it hard, he can generate so much spin in there that he can actually have the same stroke rate as a guy with a much higher setting or heavier setting, and it can be with every stroke covering more distance. So these arguments about gears and stuff, it's all a little bit random, to be honest, and it's not necessarily at all a good analogy. There are other ones that might be a little better. But that's something not to dismiss. Here's one, so powerful. Now I'm just moving on to slippage, for example, with blades and how much blade area you need. So powerful cars of any weight require wider tires, okay? Because when you put the foot down on the accelerator, they've got so much power, the wheels spin. And that analogy was the same with powerful paddlers. If you've got really powerful paddlers, especially the heavy, when they pull hard on their blade, if the blade's too small, the blade effectively cavitates. It moves through the water, which is not what you want. Instead of anchoring, it moves. So that's the signal for them to consider they need a slightly bigger. They need to sort of consider what you need to suit the size of the blade to that power, which is the same as saying in cars, and it's similar sort of thing, because it's all about traction, and it's all about with the paddle, it's all about getting that anchoring going on. So it's not a dissimilar concept. So moving right along. If you talk about blade, so here's a statement. So if it's possible for 2 paddlers, one on a smaller blade and one with a larger blade, to be traveling at the same speed, and someone says, well, how is that possible? And you say, well, because the guy with the small blade is actually having a higher stroke rate. Well, not necessarily, because you can have 2 people, one with a large blade area and one with a small one, paddling side by side with the same cadence, the same stroke rate, and they're going the same speed. And it's because the guy, and he isn't going rating any faster, the guy with a small paddle, but it's simply that he's just able to generate greater power for a smaller amount of blade area, but he's still making sure the blade is stationary at when he needs to, just as perhaps the chap is with the the big blade, but he might be a heavier person with more mass, and because of that, that's working against him, you know, or her. So that's not accurate, that statement, for example. Cadence means high or low numbers of revolution, high or low paddle stroke rates. If you go at this over distance of, say, a couple of miles, someone who has a large blade would tire quickly, whereas if they were on a smaller one, correct size blade, they would be well matched to cover distance. Well, again, that's not necessarily true at all. It all comes down to your glide rate, it comes down to your mass, your size, and a whole bunch of things. So it's not, again, you have to be very careful, that sort of misinformation, because these are generalities, and they're assuming everyone is the same, and that's, again, incorrect. So it really depends. Stroke rates really depend on a person's physiology, and the size of that paddle is going to matter. So in other words, if you are a bigger, stronger guy or girl, you may want to go to you may have to you go to the larger blade, because otherwise you've got slippage. But your idea, your goal, is come down in size to the smallest blade you can possibly get away with, not the biggest. Okay. As I quoted here, you know, most all paddlers, all the top paddlers in the world, all aim to use the smallest blade area. They're not looking for the biggest. The biggest is just drag and it's excess. They don't need that excess. They want to skinny it down to efficiency. It also allows them to go up in stroke rate if they need to. The trouble with the big blade is you're limited. You're limited to your strokes per minute. Whereas with the small paddle, you've got options to some degree. You can still, you know, plant the paddle, put a lot of power into it, get the anchoring you need, and still have a quite slow stroke rate and be very efficient. You know, so that's absolutely possible. But it's all about becoming, you know, attuned to this tool that you're using and becoming a better paddler and using yourself as an extension of it. So again, a lot of misinformation in terms of blade sizes and stroke rates and so forth. I mean, stroke rates, if you're paddling downwind, your stroke rate's generally going to be a lot higher, because you've got to, because the board's already moving fast, at times, if you put the paddle in the water, you've got to pull faster than the water's traveling beside you and past you. Otherwise, you're not going to make any connection. So that's just an obvious. When you turn around and go upwind, all the rules change, because when you go upwind, everything slows down. You know, and there was this thing some years ago. Again, the famous guy was saying, you know, when you go downwind, you need much bigger blade area. And when you go upwind, probably the other way around. But that's, again, not how we've done things. Certainly not in our rigger. We've actually go smaller blades for downwind because we want higher cadence. And there's less resistance. Whereas you go upwind, you kind of need the bigger blade. You need the bigger blade because you can get slippage with a small blade because there's more drag. So it's fuzzy logic. You got to flip around, you know. So that's really not unimportant. In terms of your thinking.
I think, Steve, the problem that a lot of us have is, you know, we just can't walk out the door and buy a paddle each and every week and to try these things. And wouldn't it be so beneficial if there were more opportunities really for us paddlers to get out and try different paddles? Some more industry demo days, I think, would be really, really useful. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of opportunity for a lot of people, other than possibly at a race or having a try of something different. So if we could influence in any way, and I'm not going on a big plug now, but WSA, we have that our symposium coming up in October, where we will have a lot of retailers there, and people will get the opportunity to try many different paddles. So if you are able to attend that audience, that would be fantastic. If you're not, well, it's a little bit difficult, isn't it, for us to get and try these different paddles?
Yeah, but and again, this is down to retailers and sellers, you know, or even websites. You know, calculating your blade size is a factor of many things. You know, it's going to be your body weight, your mass. It's going to be your strength, basically your age. I mean, that can be absolutely a factor. Your twitch muscle, you fast, you slow, what sort of paddling do you want to do, are you a sprinter, a long distance cruiser, you in the surf, you're downwinding. I mean, all these questions are not insignificant. And, you know, if you answered all those questions, you know, within an application of some sort that had, you know, algorithms that could work it all out for you, that would be, you know, it'd be nice on a website. It wouldn't be necessarily, even that would be conclusive. You still got to come and use it. But yes, I agree. You've got to get it. You know, you've got to go out there and experiment. But again, it comes down to this idea of having a quiver of paddles. The very idea of having one paddle that's going to do it all for you is, again, you know, I know you might be on a budget, but ultimately you've got to go out there and buy secondhand or beg, borrow, scrounge, and you know, just have a bit of a revelation to yourself. It's not until you do try different sticks you'll get a better idea of what suits you for different weather conditions or water conditions or race conditions, or, you know, freshwater, saltwater. I mean, that's how picky you get. I mean, if you go to extremes, you know, there is a difference between saltwater and freshwater. I know I'm going crazy now, but I mean, that's not insignificant to some extent. It certainly is in terms of volume of boards and volumes of canoes and things. And I know that's something we've dabbled with over the years with canoeing, but there's about a 3% extra buoyancy, say, in saltwater than there is in fresh. There are differences, but anyway, that's getting a bit ahead of myself. But, you know, yes, I agree with you, Chris. It's, you know, people aren't getting enough chance to try a variety of templates. I've always thought it'd be a great idea, but I've never seen one yet, where you actually have a paddle which is, you know, you basically screw it off and put a different blade on. You know, what's wrong with that? You know, you could literally interchange the blade. All it requires is a screw fit and a bit of fancy forward thinking. You just basically unscrew one template, stick another one on. You could do the same with a handle, take it off, put another one on. Then all of a sudden you've got you know, instead of buying the whole stick, you're just buying part of it. And I think that's got merit.
Well, I think you better get down to the patent office pretty quick, Steve, because you might have started some people thinking there. I suppose also, you know, the way that our sport is maturing in the UK, you know, the eBay and other sites, more people are, as they upgrade, some better quality paddles are coming on the market now. So I wouldn't discourage looking at places like that. You know, if you're looking for an upgrade, you might find quite a good deal. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you will find a lot of secondhand paddles, especially the carbon ones. The better ones they're not cheap. They're still quite expensive. But that begs the point, you know, or makes the point that they are an investment. A board generally is not an investment. They generally, just because they get flipped every year or every other year, and brands are constantly upgrading with new colorways, and they tweak it and this, then that, and the other. Sometimes not always for the better, mind you, but they do. Whereas paddles tend to be more in situ and go the distance. But so when you buy one, you know, you'll find secondhand. You'll find that the value is still there when you go to sell it, for example, if you needed to. So what have we got next in store for us? Okay. Now, one thing I like to say to beginners, if you are a beginner, the truth of the matter is there's no such thing. Wait for it. There's no such thing as a beginner paddle. And what do we mean by that? Well, certainly not in relation to, you know, a beginner should not have a heavy paddle. It's just, no, you shouldn't have a heavy paddle. No, you shouldn't have a paddle that's overly flexible. You shouldn't have one that's inefficient in its design and so forth. All those critical matters are inescapable, that you deserve a good paddle. That being said, it's more common for an entry-level paddler moving into intermediate to have a slightly larger blade area. Now, this might sound a bit counterintuitive, but there's a reason for it. And you need minimal concave in it too. You don't want a big scoop in it, because that's just cheating, and you think you're paddling really hard and holding water, but there is a price to pay at the end of the stroke. And also you want nice weight, and you want perhaps a little bit less blade angle. But again, that's an option we don't see a lot of. We don't see a lot of differences between blade angles. You know, for example, from 0 to 5 to 10 to 12 to 13 degree blade angles. We're seeing basically everyone gets basically a stock standard 12 thereabouts degrees blade, and that's the end of it, which begs the question, well, why? And you can benefit by having having less blade angle, and with different paddling techniques coming, sort of evolving lately. Lift is something that's almost being, to some extent, negated and taken out of the stroke. So why have so much angulation? So there are questions to consider, but you want this larger blade area. To come back to this question, the larger blade area is important. Why? Because when you begin, generally, if you're not from a paddling background, you generally will lack that power, that physiology. You haven't built up that musculature that you need to handle, you know, the small blade, which I'll come to in a moment. So you don't have the precision, the timing that you require. So the big blade basically is a compensation for it, where you can basically put the paddle in and you can sort of pull relatively slowly, you're still going to get some bite. Now, what happens when as you advance and you do get strong and your timing does get better, your precision improves, what you're going to find is that speed and power that you develop and evolve, and your technique allows you to slowly go to the smaller blade, because you can still get the same out of the small blade as you were getting out of the bigger blade, and actually get it more efficiently out of the small blade, because the small blade will give you less drag, you know, less windage. It's easier to wield and throw around, and it's more adaptable through a variety of different conditions. Whereas the big paddle can be can be a pain in the arse, frankly. But this is a way to start out, and I always advise schools to start with, you know, give paddlers slightly bigger paddles, because at least they will feel load and they'll feel the take up of the catch. Whereas, you know, with the small paddle, they actually won't, you know, because they'll put the paddle and they'll pull so softly that in actual fact the water will fall off the paddle, and they won't get the sensation that you're actually looking for and you're trying to teach. Of course, there are exceptions. But some comes here, this has paddling experience and perhaps given the smaller paddle, but that's the way to look at it. And it all sounds a bit counterintuitive, but that's really where you need to be. That's the sort of thinking you should be having. So I'm just coming down to weight and carbon paddles, and just aware of the time. Gee, you've been going all right, because 50 minutes has gone like that. Carbon paddles, yes. Look, you know, carbon paddles they represent the pinnacle of the paddle making. But caveat on that, there's some pretty poor carbon paddles out there, and some of them are quite heavy as well. So, you know, that's something to be considered. Just because something says it's carbon doesn't mean it's great quality. Doesn't mean it's super light. There's a lot of things you've got to be careful with this whole carbon thing, and a lot of them are carbon composites. Most are carbon composites to some extent, but what is that composite? How well is it put together? You know, you need to look, if you're shelving out a lot of money, you need some touchy feely. You know, you need to be able to look at this thing and actually see how it is put together, how good that quality really is, because it could be coming out of, you know, China and not so good, or could be coming out of someone's shed in the United States, and it's absolutely sensational. You know, so you've got to be a little bit, you know, discerning about that. Now, weight is important, but let's not get carried away as well. I mean, years ago there used to be this fantastic formula going around. You take the weight of the blade, you multiply it by the number of times you swing it and carry it, and all this. You divide it by your grandmother's age, add your telephone number, and you got a weight of about 3,000 pounds after paddling 70 miles. All very interesting, but actually not a lot of rubbish, because really, when you take the paddle out of the water, if you're paddling correctly, the way that you're paddling in that exit recovery is you actually almost throwing the blade forward, and it's just a light sort of flick through the wrist and the shoulder and so forth. Now, in doing that, the blade actually travels. Of course, it's flying through the air, almost weightless, a bit like if you take a small rock and you chuck it, it's weightless. So having some weight is actually okay, but not a lot. An absolute weightless paddle, which I've certainly used in the past, yeah, they can actually be quite tricky. A little bit of weight is okay. The issue is, where is this weight? Now, the swing weight's important of a paddle, and it's true to say that if you have two paddles of equal weight, and one's got more weight in the blade than the other, it'll feel heavier to use than the one that's got a better distribution of weight throughout the paddle in total. It's got a nice light blade. So, you know, there are caveats there too, but the swing weight's not an important. It's a bit like when you play golf. You know, don't know the first thing about golf, but, you know, I think with golf, when I've read about it to sort of make comparisons, the swing weight is important, because it does a lot of the work for you, and it can assist you to a point. And this is the same is true of paddling. So swing weight becomes, now, how do you try that swing weight? Well, again, you can go in a store and just try it. You stand up on a stool and just try it. If you're just, you know, in a retail store, you can go in there and just get that idea of swinging it. And one thing I teach people is to swing through and let the lower hand go. So you let the the blade fly forward and see how it returns to you. Get a feel for it in your hand. How can you micromanage that paddle? Does it feel like you're in control of it, or you just can never get control of it? And then add in wind and water and all the rest of it. You can get a fair idea that it's going to be either a nightmare or something will work for you. So the greatest issue about weight, of course, is you pay for it. You pay a lot of money for weight, but like I say, not just because something's carbon. And you'll be really, really surprised. Go to websites for paddles and you'll see how very few of them actually give you an actual weight. How many will actually commit to saying, well, it weighs 13 ounces or 15 or 27 or 1 kilogram, whatever it might be. They're very risk averse to that. They go, it's carbon, it's fantastic, it's got this great shape and it's got dimples and it's got the concaves in the right spot, and then you buy it on that basis. And Fred Fanakapan told you should, so you buy it. Then you get it and you go, not so good after all. So again, be careful, or ask questions about the weight, and learn what the difference between, say, a super lightweight paddle is, all the way through to a very heavy one and somewhere in between. Then you get an idea what you're up against.
Steve, just out of interest, what actually is the weight of some of the lighter paddles that are on the market?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it's they give an extreme example of outrigger canoe paddles. I mean, if you think that you can make an outrigger paddle in the vicinity of like 15 ounces or something crazy, which is a super light paddle, and then they go up to, going up to sort of 20, 22 ounces. They're sort of absolute, and you've only got to add the shaft, make the shaft a bit longer, and you can certainly be within those realms. But the thing about the stand-up paddle, of course, is the shaft and the amount of leverage it's put on it. So you do have to build up some weight into it. But these days, anything under a pound, is pretty good. And then if you start getting into, like I say, get into the spooky realms of racing paddles, they're going to be considerably less. But again, weight is an issue which, as I say, you've got to be very careful about, because it can be that they're so light that they're fragile, and they have dry layups. I mean, one of the ways to cheat the system with carbon paddles is to just dry them out to the point there's very little way of epoxy in there, the resin they put in. So then they might get oven baked, they might get vacuum bags where you basically like a wrapping on it, and it gets suction on it and it squeezes out all the excess. It's all well and good, but it can make for a very dry layup, and that creates fracture points and dry spots, which is not clever. But a lot of the weight is, one of the things you'll find with carbon paddles is that they try to make, because they're expensive, they try to make them look glossy and fancy, and actually that puts a lot of weight into the paddle almost unnecessarily. Whereas actually, like some of the better super expensive carbon ones look a bit industrial, because they don't worry about all that gloss effect, they don't worry about that lacquering, and they just pretty much just churn it out and give it to you just wet and dried. Here it is, so.
Yeah, almost like a matte finish then, I guess. Might say the Werner Grand Prix is 415 grams. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, some of the weights you see are astonishing, and I guess the thing is, I've seen paddles snap for sure, and they do, and it's one thing. Remember, when a carbon paddle snaps, it's pretty catastrophic. And I've seen guys have stitches, that can happen. So they snap, and then you get stuck into you, or they snap and they go into the hands. So light's good, but just be really, again, this comes down to, get your paddle, and you've got to be inspected, go through it. Every time you go back on the water, just give it a bit of a look over, just see if there's any stress fractures, anything going on with it, because any funny noises. And what you'll find with carbon is, though, it won't give you any notice. It will basically just snap. It goes snap. There's no creaking, no funny weirdness and noise. It just snap. No, fiberglass will make a bit of a noise. Timber certainly makes a bit of a noise. Sometimes it can go just suddenly, but it's rare. But carbon will just suddenly go, and you can see, but that's why you need to maintain it and also just have a good look at it.
A question, Steve, coming in. If that should happen to paddles, are they repairable, the carbon paddles?
Depends how catastrophic they are. Well, actually, to be fair, you can snap one in half. You can repair them, but the trouble with any repair you ever do on carbon or anything similar is that where the repair ends, it's always the repair is going to be stronger than the original paddle, generally speaking. So it's going to then create a weak point where the repair ends. So the repair needs to be quite. If you've got wherever the crack is, you need to almost like run another layer of carbon very, very long to the top towards the bottom, to sort of spread that load out, if you're with me, rather than concentrating it back in where the original injury or the original break was. Also, it will affect the flex properties. Once you start messing around with putting in repairs, the flex that was inherently built into it will be compromised to some extent. So
yeah, and it's the dreaded chip on the blade as well, isn't it, itself, which is pretty difficult to repair, but I know it can be done because I've had some repaired myself.
Well, on super really high quality ones, for example, the carbon is sandwiched at the end here. There's no foam there whatsoever. You can just see. Can you see that lip? You can see there's like a lip between it. Yeah, there's nothing there, but that's where the foam begins. And this one actually uses a very spooky material, the foam, and I believe it's used in bathoscopes, which is pretty extreme. Now this here, you can actually sand that back. So if you have any chips, you just get the sandpaper and you can sand it. And it's not uncommon for some paddlers to get these and sand quite a bit of, they sand all the way around to make it even smaller. But there's there for stone chips, for whacking into when you're doing river running, that sort of thing. So, that's a great sort of paddle to have, because you can constantly, attend to it with a bit of sandpaper. Now, a huge number of paddles come that they have maybe like a PVC reinforcing around the edges where they join. The problem with that is that it's a plastic and it doesn't, it creates adhesion problems and delamination problems. Once that starts to get cracked and bashed and whacked, a bit of sandpaper won't cut it. You've actually got to get in there and start doing some serious, carbon fiber work to repair it. And of course, delaminations comes when water gets in there. Water gets in and expands in the heat, and then it pulls the actual material away from the foam, for example, and then you've got real issues.
Yeah, all kinds of things to think about there, isn't it? How the paddle is affected once we undergo the repair.
Yep.
What Michelle's asking, and I'm not quite sure if this is the right time to ask this question to you now, Steve, but Michelle's saying, and if it's not, please move on and we can address it later, but should folks be looking at buying a fixed or an adjustable paddle? What's your advice there?
Well, it's a relatively simple answer, really. I mean, fixed is if you're not sharing your paddle between buddies and mates and friends, and you feel that you've got one particular paddle and one board that you use predominantly, then you'd buy for that. To some. Now, the idea behind this fixed is basically that you can get away with a lighter paddle, because you don't have all the moving extension parts on it. So that is an advantage. And of course, they tend to be more durable overall, because as soon as you start drilling holes in and putting clips and extensions, so that's just another piece to go wrong and to create a weak spot. It also affects the actual flex properties of the paddle as a whole. To have continuity of flex from tip to grip is affected by making it into an adjustable. The issue comes, and I can see where she might be coming with, Michelle might be coming with this, but if you, for example, some people have a number of race balls. Now there are a couple of super lightweight adjustable paddles, but some of them are superb. They're still not 100%, but they're close, to what would be acceptable. But if you've got a number of boards you want to use, you might want to use a different lengths, and that becomes where you start to really question if you. And they're not cheap, but man, they're wicked money. They're good investment, I guess, if that's where you want to go. But most all serious racers are just using a fixed. That's it, and they'll have, if they've got to buy 2 or 3 or 4, because some of us, they're sponsored, they can afford to do that. But if you had that luxury, that's what you do, and if you had the luxury of it. Now, remember that a 2-piece is still not a travel paddle. You've got to get to 3 pieces to really be into the travel realms, where you're going to stick it in the hold or in a travel bag effectively. Otherwise, it's going to go generally as oversized luggage and blah, blah, blah. So Yeah, just keep an eye on that. You know, say the flex properties can be affected, the weight can be affected, and it's a micromanagement issue, and it's a finance issue. You know, just what the affordability.
Yeah, and you were talking about the one piece there, Steve. The one cut. We all have that one cut, and I'm sure some of the audience here have made the wrong cut. We
Yep.
can always, well, we cannot. If we cut too short, we can't add it back on, can we? Any advice when it comes to, paddle length and people cutting their paddles and setting the handle
Yeah.
on that one, because it can be a very costly mistake.
Yeah. I mean, I've got something about. Let's have a look at something here. Let's have a look at this. I'll just move on a bit to say paddle length. You know, what length from tip to grip. You know, which is actually quite essential because. You know, and before I even go there, you know, to establish that, you really need to go through this process here. So I've got my arms raised above my head. I'm going for a 90-degree sort of angle. What you do is you form that shape, and then I tend to just move the lower hand, one hand span in from that, and it tends to be just about right for most people. Now, if you don't get that right at the beginning, then actually the whole process of then trying to establish what length blade or paddle you need from tip to grip becomes an issue. And again, this is a dark art, and just to sort of reinforce that, I think I've got a picture here somewhere. Right, okay. So, you know, there's the shaka, there's the 6-inch, there's the 8-inch, there's the stand like this, there's the put the shot. There's a million ways to do it, right? Stand on a chair and recite the national anthem. I mean, yeah, it's just like, most of it's complete nonsense. There is only one way to establish what paddle length you need. So here's a photograph of myself. So we can use this in our canoeing, but we're sat down obviously. But the most plausible selection, it's used in canoeing, all sorts of forms of canoeing, and it applies to stand up. The most plausible selection of an appropriate paddle length is as follows. When paddling on, say, flat water, exercising good technique. Now, do you have good technique? Okay, and form. 60 to 70% effort, so you're not going flat out. And the blade is fully submersed. In other words, you're at that sort of hand over hand position. We're in that power phase. Shaft's vertical, okay. Your top hand needs to be about level with your forehead, more or less at that point, okay. Now, that's important because that is when you're stressing your body the most. That's the most stressful point. Now, the good thing about this point is your elbow is at least at the same level as your shoulder or lower than. That's important, and it's pointing downwards. They're really important things. And once you start to get a handle on what that is, so when you go out and start paddling with the paddle you've got, let's say you've cut it and you just put some duct tape around it, you haven't glued it yet, but you've done the first cut, you think that's about right. Just go out there and just paddle and just get a feel for it and try to monitor where that top hand is. Is it here? Am I stirring porridge here, or am I up here, or am I down there? People talk about shoulder injuries, and of course it's critical, it's very important. And you know, one of the things about shoulder injuries is the rotator cuff. Okay, you have the glenoid cavity, and then you've got the humerus sits up inside of it, and it rolls around like this. Now, as you raise your arm, okay, it basically, the humerus closes a space in the glenoid cavity. And when it closes that space, there's a little sheath, and that sheath is a protective sheath for the nerve endings, but you can rub those through, and eventually that's when you get shoulder injury. So if you're working up here and you're compressing down like that, and you're at that hand over hand phase when you're very high and the elbow is above the level of the shoulder, you are absolutely in danger territory there. That's where you're already going to be setting yourself up for injury. So again, it's critical to take note of that. Okay, it really is critical to take that on board. All right. So now, some people are born, by the way, with very narrow spaces between that glenoid cavity and the humerus, and other people have a bigger distance. So again, some people have a genetic issue with that as well. Just happens to be they're going to be more susceptible. So that sort of helps, hopefully. And as I say, it's a question of just establish where that lower hand is, you've got other issues too, haven't we? You know, these issues of, look at the board thicknesses here. You've got a thick board and a narrow and a slim board. But again, this is where it comes back to either the adjustable, a good quality one, or if you can, then you're going to mix up your paddles. Now, in this instance, one's for surf, this board, and the other one's for racing. So and should you use the same paddle for both? The answer to that is probably no, because one is more specialist. It's a niche. You know, one's one thing and one's another thing. But they are not insignificant. You could have boards that are 6-7 inches thick as against 4 3/4 or thereabouts. So there's going to be variance of 2 to 3 inches. That's not insignificant. That will absolutely impact the length of paddle that you end up using. Okay, so does that help you there, one, Chris?
Yeah, that's great bit of advice there, Steve. Thank you very much.
Yes, yeah. But again, get familiar with all those things. I was just going to talk about performance. You know, I mean, the paddle. I mean, the paddle is all about. It's all about, you know, cementing yourself into the ground, into the water in this case, and then pulling yourself up to it. And then we talk about technique and how to paddle and how to establish that catch and through into the pull phase. I mean, that's another topic altogether. But of course, if the tool you're using isn't up to the job, then, you know, that's going to be a problem. And of course, we just discussed blade area and so forth, and that's not irrelevant because, you know, you want to be working towards the smallest blade area you can possibly manage, so you've got that grip. Remembering all the time that when something is stationary in the water and you're pulling yourself up to the blade, okay, that's all it needs to do. There's no variance of stationary. Stationary is stationary is stationary. If it's not moving, it's not moving, it's doing its job. So it doesn't matter whether the paddle's big or small. As long as it's not moving, it's doing its job. So you need to just find out what the smallest blade you can use as feasible. As I say, paddlers will move from bigger to smaller over time because the smaller ones will give them all that they need, and they can go just as fast as a guy with, you know, and faster than the guy with the big blade. Because the guy with the big blade is going to get fatigued a lot faster. So if you can use a small paddle, that's great. But some people are limited, as I say, they're limited to the big paddle because of their body mass, and that's just a fact of life, unfortunately. Okay, so flat blade tips and curved blade tips. Some blades have a slight curve, some will be dead straight. There's a slight variance there. The curves were originally put in because if you're entering straight down, you've got that slight curved entry, which is it takes the little plopping away at the beginning, prevents water being taken down, whereas a straight one would work against you. That's why with the straighter paddles, you've got to sort of come around a little bit from the side rather than going straight down. So that, again, that's a variance of design you need to look for in the paddles that you're seeking out. And again, that relates to your paddling style. Slippage, something I was going to cover. So slippage basically occurs when a few things happen. It can happen as a result of poor catch, which is a technical thing. It can happen because your body mass exceeds the blade area. In other words, you're just a very heavy person, and as you're pulling, it's just not coping with that at all. Your strength could be so that it exceeds the blade area. It could be a factor of both mass and strength added together. The drag exceeds the blade area. And for example, if you are going upwind and you've got a very small blade, you can find that slipping. So that's working against you. Could just be poor blade design, you know. So again, multiple factors there to consider. It comes down to what I said before, though. Your blade area only needs to be as large as required to become anchored. So as long as the blade is stationary, a bigger size will make no difference at all. All it's doing is actually adding more fatigue and more drag to your experience. Okay, so that's really slippage in a nutshell. But you know, I with the technical side of things we've been discussing over the few weeks, understanding how to prevent slippage is really important, because you could have the best paddle in the world and still get slippage, and that's going to be ultimately someone's going to start looking at your technique and say, well, actually, you need to look at your technique as to why this slippage is occurring, and then we need to start micromanaging that to improve it. And it could be blade size, it could just be that you're not up to the task of pulling correctly at this point, or perhaps you're just not strong enough for the blade or whatever. But there's always those micromanagement details that are essential to consider. Here's another one. Total blade area must be considered in relation to where that area is. Much like board volume must be considered in the same way. it's more misleading information. You know, it's no good saying your board's got 250 liters or 350 liters. Where is the volume? It could all be in the nose and none in the tail. And all of a sudden you've got a different discussion on your hands. It's the same with the paddle. Blade area, which has become another catch cry for selling. It's got so many square inches. Well, big deal. Where is it? Where is that blade area? You know, is it all down the bottom, all up the top? Is it nice and long and skinny? Or is it short and fat and wide? I mean, that's the real issue. The blade area is, as I say, it's a very misleading thing, and you need to forearm yourself with this information and question and go, yeah, blade area, but where is the blade area? You know, board volume, but where is the board? Where is the volume in the board? You know, if you not start, you have to think for yourself and protect yourself. I've got illustrations here, you know, these paddles here in the corner, you know, 4 different paddles, and every one of them offers completely different things. So you've got, if you look at everything outside of the paddle, so if you were to take these black lines going up to the shoulder, it's not what you see or what the blade gives you. It's actually what's missing that's almost important, because, you know, here you've got all this white space. This is all missing. There's nothing there. Missing. You know, all these areas are missing. You know, but what's interesting about these paddles is that, you know, how the power band, you know, this power band between these white lines, this is the power, so where these power bands lie is, and it all gives different feelings of the way the paddle works. If all the energy is down the bottom of the tip, it makes sense that it's very likely to want to trip over itself because it's held down the bottom. There's nothing at the top stopping it from falling over, which is why what we find with stand up, you know, because you're standing, it pays to have the higher aspect paddle. Generally speaking, especially if you're taller, because you've got that long, tall, progressive area, and it doesn't trip over itself because there's more mass or more volume rather, or blade area going higher and higher up here rather than all being concentrated nice and low down, which if you're sitting is absolutely fine because it's a different mechanism. When you start to stand, all bets are off. It's a very different experience. So that's something to, again, consider. Now, that being said, there's a caveat, of course. If you're in the surf and you're spending a lot of time, you know, down low, or perhaps doing downwind, or sort of crouching down low and sort of really powering up, then the teardrop sort of shape, the lower aspect becomes more relevant. So I'm not going to say to you that's for all aspects of stand-up paddleboarding, because there are all different facets of it. So therefore you need to be aware of, you know, what am I doing? Is this fit for purpose? What am I more likely to do? If you're cruising just and not really getting over the top of the stroke at all, just sort of cruising along, you know, the higher aspect paddle is absolutely the way to go. But as you get more and more aggressive and you get lower and lower, you're sort of doing more, you know, acrobatics on the board, you know, running back and forth and carrying on, trying to meld with the ocean, everything moving around, then the lower aspect paddle can actually be a help. But again, there are caveats to that too. If you're racing and you're on really choppy water, but it's not big, but it's quite choppy, then the high aspect paddle is very good too, because again, it's progressive. You can always, you know, you can use a little bit or a lot of it. The trouble with the small short paddles, you've got to kind of use all of it, or it doesn't really work very well. So different, again, horses for courses in terms of how you use the blade. Rounded shafts. Okay, so you've got a rounded shaft or you've got an oval shaft. And again, you know, the oval shaft is a superior animal, but you don't see it that much. Why? Because it's a pain in the ass to make. So we're basically constricted primarily to experiencing rounded shafts because they're easy just to put on a loom and make them, you know, whereas the oval is not. But from an engineering point of view, it's stronger. The beauty is with the oval shaft is actually you can just rest the oval in the you know, just in your fingers, and you can just pull really easily, and it's not spinning off axis. And with a round shaft, of course, it spins. It's you know, circular, and it's going to move inside of you in your hand space. So I think this is I don't know if you can see that one. That's actually see, it's got straight. That's got a side wall. It's a side wall. That's an oval. Okay. All right. So that's enough. So you can literally paddle with this just by putting in there and you're pulling against a nice ridge. Whereas if with the rounded paddle, you don't have that luxury. You've actually got to squeeze it quite not hard, but you've got to give it a little bit of a nudge to maintain control of it. So it's a little harder to use. But as I say, very few paddles out there with that are oval. And again, it all comes down to cost and just being a pain in the neck for people to actually make them. Grip circumference, something I mentioned briefly at the beginning, but grip circumference is important. You know, if the shaft is too small, you'll find yourself having to overly grip it to maintain control. By the same token, if it's too big, you're going to lose control of it. So again, this is important, and that's a question you should be looking at. You know, what's the optimum shaft grip circumference that works for me? You know, at least find the sort of the limits, the upper limits and tolerances that are appropriate to you and your hands, because some people have very long fingers, some are short, wide hands, and so forth. We're all different. And just a note on that, I mentioned before in my previous webinars, you know, you're not trying to. A lot of people complain about forearm aching and you know, getting problems there. You're not trying to squeeze the living daylights out of the shaft. If you are, you're doing things all wrong. Either your technique is incorrect, or the paddle is just, you know, very hard to manage, and you're having to do that. But you really you're really pulling off these two fingers. Okay, you're pulling off these two fingers largely. Little fingers almost relaxed, not doing a great deal. And in the recovery, it's basically transferring to this area here as a rollock. As you're coming through, it's going to roll through and come back, but you're actually pulling through here. And as you roll through, it's rolling in here, okay? And again, a lot of people have been paddling for years. I've got a big lump here. You know, a lot of paddlers have got those big calluses because that's the rollocking action where the shaft's rolling, but you're really just pulling off these lower fingers. And you should be able to just literally pull with those lower fingers and not squeeze at all. There's no squeezing going on at all. So again, and you're finding a balance between that load at the top and pull from the bottom. That's what's giving that nice balance, and then you're at one with this instrument. Okay, so again.
So Steve, Ben's just asking a question here. Would an oval shaft help reduce flutter or slippage?
Yeah, I mean, possibly it could, because I mean, obviously, your pull could be more directional. You know, it's a more positive mechanism for pulling against, if that makes sense. So yes, when a paddle flutters, it oscillates. And as it's oscillating, of course, that comes up through the shaft, and of course, it could be that even when you're pulling, that you're actually, you know, you haven't got full control of that shaft. So potentially, why not? It could well be. And I think that, you know, anything we can do to mitigate flutter and maximize control has to be a good thing. So I would say yes, potentially the oval shaft could assist as one part of multiple factors which goes towards eliminating that flutter. The other thing about the you know, with the round shaft, so you tend to, because you're gripping a little harder sometimes, you do feel that you are, it's weird, the harder you grip, the less control you have. It's weird, you lose touch, you lose feel. You know, it's because when you're not just on the lower fingers, it feels light, and you can feel every movement down there coming from the blade. And if you have the oval, the beauty about the oval is exactly that. When you're pulling through, you really can feel any deviation, and you can compensate if you need to. But when you're gripping the living daylights of a rounded shaft, it does negate some of the way that it's talking back to you in terms of what you're feeling, you know, so that's not insignificant.
I find the oval shaft very useful in the surf. You know, you've got a wipeout, you've got to grab your paddle really quickly, and you know instantly, you get that feel, yep, right, it's the right way around, bang, off I go.
Now that's a good point. That's one good thing you just said, the right way around. Now that's one very good point. You know, with the oval shaft, you kind of know where you are. You know, it can only be, well, one way or the other, whereas the around it could be anywhere. Do you know what I mean? So because the oval shaft maintains position, and when you grab it, you kind of know, oh great, it feels correct. I've got control of it. When you have the rounded shaft, is you don't really know, and it can slide, it can twist off axis with every stroke you take. You know, and that's not what you want. You don't want any movement like this. This is what the chat was just asked before, because you know, you could be that it is literally rotating in your finger, between your fingers. You know, in your palm.
Yeah, and if you're in the impact zone, you need to get out there as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible for those of us who SUP surf.
There
So,
you go.
yeah, having
Yeah,
your paddle the right way around is a pretty useful tip.
yeah, yeah, that helps. So yeah, again, another micromanagement, another thing you can look for in paddles in good ones, and so they're pretty rare, but absolutely worth it. It's again, it's a game changer. I mean, Chris, you probably paddled with both styles, and you know, once you start paddling with an oval shaft, it's very hard to go back to a rounded one. You know, that's what I've found. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
the levels of control are very, very different. Concaves, quickly on this one, fuzzy logic. You know, the idea of putting concaves into paddles is fuzzy logic. Why? Because it cheats the system. It gives it this impression that when you on entry that you've got a small bucket there. It's this little dimpled area that you can grab a whole a bunch of water. Oh, great! I feel good because I've got a bunch of water. Okay. The trouble is that you then got to get rid of it, and at the end of the stroke, it's still there. And that's where the heavily concave paddles become a real problem because they are fatiguing. You have to have very early exit. If you don't, like when you're in school situations, what you'll often see is paddlers running backwards and falling off backwards. That's because the paddler's overly loaded at the end of the stroke, and many beginners will pull too far back. And with a heavily concave paddle, it's just an accident waiting to happen to pull you backward. But it is fuzzy logic. Because the best way to get good catch is through good placement, loading up the paddle with speed, with an efficient blade that has no concaves at all, absolutely none. There's no need for it. It really is just it's a panacea. It's a thing that's put there to compensate, a compensatory thing for people who just kind of need that little bit of load. But you will find they are very fatiguing. Now, there are some special paddles that have been designed in the past, which they have a slight concave in them. But when you pull, the bizarre thing is when you set the paddle, the concave's there, and when you pull, it disappears. So it literally goes from being a concave to flat. Kind of cool, really, because it kind of gives you at least that, that load that you might feel that you need. But again, it's still it's a quasi reality, because it's the feel that you're feeling with the concave is just, it's not necessarily translating into what you're trying to achieve. It's not, because what you want to do is basically pull against water that's not moving. You're going to achieve that through sound technique. You can't build that into a paddle and expect it to suddenly give you that thing that you're looking for. So again, it's fuzzy logic. So don't get sucked into, my paddle feels really good. You try, I could feel that. It feels really powerful, quote unquote. No paddle is powerful. That's nonsense. There's no such thing as a powerful paddle. There's only an efficient one. You're the person that gives power to it. And if you don't give the right power to it, you got nothing. So that's really what it amounts to. Okay. In fact, the more load you feel at the beginning of the paddle, it shouldn't feel so loaded up it's practically pulling you off the board, because if it does, then that's massively fatiguing. You don't need that. The best paddles in the world are the ones that literally you can determine. They're like an accelerator pedal. You can literally put as much or as little power as you want to, or speed you want to, and they work at all different speeds and levels of the thrust that you're applying to it. Some paddles, literally, you have to sort of thrash the living daylights out to get anything out of them, and that's not good either. Or even these ones that say they're giving you this fuzz, or they feel like they're doing a great deal, and actually not doing a lot at all. They're just making you tired. And this comes back to paddling technique. People that feel like, if you're the sort of person that feels like you're not in pain when you're paddling, you've got to be pulling like hell, because you feel that is a sign, a signal, a trigger that's telling you, my God, I'm working hard, I must be going fast. Well, you need to reevaluate that very quickly, because that's not what paddling is. It's meant to be fluid. It's meant to be relaxed, and a series of relaxation and tension, but it's not meant to be that. Okay. Sprinting is different. Sprinting is all about pain. There's just no way around it. 500 meters paddle, you stole it. That's a different game altogether. Anyway, that's another topic. Flutter, we sort of covered that. The idea of the blade, obviously fluttering as it's going through the water. That's basically water particles leaving either side. And to be fair, a lot of flutter occurs toward the end of the stroke, or the midway through it, primarily because there's a softening. As you're coming off the power, then that's when the water particles will start to leave. And this exit phase is really important. So you don't want flutter, but you want to be able to lift the paddle out of the water cleanly. You don't want a big mass there holding you down. So that's really important. So very clean blade faces, will exit very clean, like it should enter like a knife into butter and exit in the same way. It doesn't want to go down like a big bucket or sort of like a plop and then come out with a plop. It needs to slice in, slice out. Has a zingy feel about it. That's very, very super encouraging. And which brings me, I think, to flex. Flex is an interesting point. So flex is nearly finished, guys, but flex is something that it occurs in the blade where it morphs under load. It happens at the neck where the blade joins to the shaft, and it happens throughout the length of the shaft itself. So you've got 3 primary areas it could possibly happens. The 2 primary areas would be the blade itself in the shaft. So again, you've got to sort of balance this up. Now, obviously, this is the worst case scenario. This is using a plastic, basically polycarbonate type fin. That's going to paddle. That's going to lead to a lot of problems. But how much flex is enough, and how much is too little? This is really not. This is really important. If you can see this chap here, you can see how much flex is in that paddle there. I mean, that's just appalling. That's just too much, because it's acting like a shock absorber. You're sticking in, he's pulling, and of course all the energy he's putting in is really just, most of what he's doing, his energy is being spent in bending the paddle, and not much of it's translating into forward drive at all. Okay, so you've got to find a halfway house. Now, that being said, if you've got pre-existing injuries and so forth, then there's the softer shaft, a bit of flex and bend in it is a very good thing for you. It will protect your joints. That's important. And again, when you're starting out, you do not want to have a really stiff shaft. You want to make sure you get something that has got some flex, but not as much as that. And it'll occur to you when you're paddling. You should be looking for it. You should be looking for that. Well, is it flexing too much? Again, that's a feel orientated thing, and you'll feel that it's too flexible if it feels squidgy, and you think, and if you've got the ability to power up a little harder, just pull a little harder, and it just feels heavy and squidgy, even though it's quite a light paddle, then it's kind of telling you already this is too flexible. And as paddlers get stronger and fitter, and the guys who are racing, they all tend to go to a stiffer construction. Why? Because for every pound of energy they put in, they want to get their pound out, but for every bit that's being lost in flex, that's a waste in terms of energy expenditure. The other good thing about having a paddle that has some flex at all is that on the exit, it comes out with what we call with a recoil. Okay, so as it morphs back into shape, it comes out with a sort of boing. There's a sort of spring to it, which is very encouraging in terms of allowing you to to move, if you like, from that exit to the recovery in that swing through. If you have a shaft that's very, very stiff, when it comes out dead, you literally are having to carry it all the way through to the entry again through that recovery, but then it's giving you no encouraging sort of feeling at all. So, be aware of that too. You need just about right spring, but not too much, so it's just basically it's being ineffectual. So again, lighter paddlers, as against heavier paddlers, there's a difference there. When a heavier paddler is going to bend a shaft considerably more than the lighter paddler, just through sheer mass and the drag that's being created through the board itself and the weight acting downwards. So again, depending on your weight, you're gonna look at the different flex properties. I mean, a heavier paddler generally will need to have a slightly stiffer shaft just by nature of themselves, because if they have too much flex, it'll be all flex and not much pull. So the lighter paddlers can get away with a bit more flex. They kind of need it because of that too. So again, it's a balancing act, and again, not all companies offer that, but some do, and those that do should be commended. It's a great thing to find. And how do they do this? Well, they tend to add fiberglass to they call it composite. They're generally putting GRP in there to give it some flex. So and they should tell you a percentage. They'll tell you it's you know, it's a 60-40 or a 70-30. So they give you the breakdown of what's, you know, the percentages and what's there. Some shafts, by the way, are tapered, and that's a great thing too. A tapered shaft is pretty cool. So a tapered shaft with an oval shape would be even better. So where are we now? So we've covered paddle length. And I'm getting towards the end now, guys, but I mean, for those who join us a bit late. But anyway, this is, I think you're recording this, aren't you, Chris?
Yes, we are, yeah. It will be available on the WSA YouTube channel, which you can see on our WSA Facebook. You can view it that way.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, just coming down to the practical aspects of paddles in general, you know, you know, the idea of having we were all asked this question, you know, whether to go for a fixed or go for an adjustable 2-piece or break apart paddles. You know, there's all the options, but it does come down to cost. And you know, if the 1-piece is still going to be the elite level, the best in terms of performance, you go to a 2-piece. It's absolutely fine, but again, if you want to get a super good carbon one that's 2-piece, it's not cheap. The problem with the 2-piece ones, if you buy just the regular cheap ones, there are multiple issues with those that you have to be aware of. You know, because it's adjustable, it's a sliding telescopic setup. Sand is its enemy. Salt water is its enemy. You'll see low-grade stainless steel bits of equipment used where that becomes a problem. With screw fitments and so forth, or the clips, internal clips and so forth. They can be a problem. Sometimes they'll fill up with water because there's no closed foam inside of them. So there are multiple things to look for. Even the system of clips that they use, you've either got, you know, just a fold over latch, which can have a single bolt or a double bolt. Go for the double bolt if you can. There are ones that screw up. They are okay, but again, they're susceptible to sand getting in there, and that can be an issue. They can, if you leave them over time, you can't get them undone. So yeah, adjustables, very practical, great thing to have for you if perhaps you've got a number of boards that you might go between. But generally they're used largely for schools, and they're used for families where they want to share between everybody, you know, so that's really the thrust of their existence. The 3-piece paddles for traveling, of course, they break down. You can put them in the hole a lot better than you can rather than going oversized luggage. And again, to find one of those in the carbon version is at the higher end of being light. Tricky, and again, the bend flex qualities of those will be not as neat and groovy and smooth and fluid as, say, buying the fixed one. But you know, if we want to travel in style, and perhaps that can only be the only way to go. But got a symbol there of dollars, and you know, it all comes down to the dosh. You know, how much money do you want to invest in your paddle? But at the end of the day, you know, it really is important to pay attention to the paddle. It is absolutely the most significant thing that you will purchase in terms of your experience, of your stand-up paddleboarding experience. Twice the money spent on a paddle will give you twice the paddle often, whereas twice the money on the board won't give you twice the board. And that's really the reality of it. So money spent on a good paddle will tend to give you better and better performance, and it will keep you on the water longer. You'll enjoy your paddling more. All the technical things, all the classes and lessons in the world that you can listen to will make no difference if you've got a water whacker from hell. You've really got to invest well and take your paddling to another level. So yeah, I think I've tried to cover as much as I can. There's just so much. I mean, it's a massive topic. We've already gone way over time as usual, but there's just so much to talk about. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, I'm just mindful of time, Steve, and you've given us a fascinating insight into, like you said, say a massive topic. You know, a lot of the slides that people are viewing here are taken from your book. So for those people that, you know, may want to take this to another level, if you just tell us about your book, Steve, just briefly, and how people can purchase it, because it's full of so many useful tips, and the paddle section is extremely well covered, as is everything really. So how can people buy your book, Steve, and what's it called?
Well, yes, the book's actually got something like 50 56 or 60 pages about paddles in there, which is quite bizarre, really. There is practically a book in itself. But canoeculture.com, KANU.com, Canoe Culture, and that's the book there. It's kind of, people refer to it as the Bible. You know, it's 5 years to create that. There's an awful lot of information in it. And every topic, there's so many topics in there covered very thoroughly. And, you know, it's, you know, again, it's a good investment, I believe. And remember, I always tell people, this isn't just about me telling you what I think, not gospel according to me. You know, you've got to remember, this is me having interviewed a lot of people, spoken to a lot of people, and participating in paddle sports for near on 40 years now. So what's in there is a summation of so much of knowledge that's been given and passed on to me like a tribal elder, I suppose. I'm more than happy to share what I know. And I make an apology for anything that sounds counterintuitive sometimes, or sometimes it sounds contradictory. It's certainly not meant to. And, you know, it's one of those things that the fact of the matter is we're all so different. You know, every one of us is an individual. And because of that, you know, we perceive things differently, and we want to be sort of catered for individually. And, you know, so I don't mean to confuse anyone, but I'm always happy to answer questions through our website, through the information there, and happy to help anytime.
Yeah, and for those of you who may not be aware, Steve will be at our WSA symposium, which is in his backyard at Hailing Island. That's in October 17th and 18th, and at the minute it's we got the go ahead. So if you want to catch up with Steve there, we'll be running some amazing workshops with a lot of our trainers. It'd be great to see you there. You can find out all the information on the website. So I think we've gone way over time, Steve. We always do, but that's great because I love listening to this your webinars. So I just want to say, on behalf of WSA, amazing. Thank you ever so much for another fascinating webinar, and thank you very much to our audience. I hope you enjoyed that. If you've missed some of it, it will be on our YouTube channel. We'll be posting that sometime tomorrow, and all the other ones that we've run are on there as well. It's a free resource. Next Wednesday, we've got a free webinar also on plastics in our oceans, so it'd be good to see some of the audience there. So from me, Steve, I'd like to say thank you. I don't know if there's anything you want to add before we sign off.
No, just thank everyone for joining, and hope it's been informative. And I'm just so stoked that so many people are actually wanting and willing to learn and to listen. And importantly, people don't get confused. You know, if you are getting confused, then take a deep breath. As I say, you can always contact me, and I'll help you however I can. But basically, you know, you do have to be your own myth buster. You've got to start. You know, don't believe everything you hear. Ask questions. You know, be confrontational. You know, don't take everything for verbatim. It's really important in your learning process. It really is.
Yeah, very wise words. Okay, so thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks once again, Steve. Stay safe, happy paddling, and we hope to see some of you on Wednesday or next Friday. So look out for the information. Okay. So thanks again. Night, everyone.
Okay. Good evening.
Or morning, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, Chris.
Hey. Yeah. I'll probably call you in shortly, Steve.
Okay, mate. Take care.
Okay. Thank you very much.